This Saturday at a ballroom in Atlantic City, a big fight will take place. It's Carl Froch's latest WBC super-middleweight title defence and the semi-final of the Super 6 tournament. Carl has fought 3 times so far in this fantastic but draining event, and he needs to beat the veteran Glenn Johnson to reach the final. Now, in the final, there is a promised big payday, big fight against unbeaten American Andre Ward. He won the 2004 gold medal in Athens. Now, Froch spoke to me last week. This week, for a feel of the Atlantic Ocean, an insight into the Kazi that is Atlantic City, I'm joined by Carl's new promoter, Eddie Hearn. Good morning, Eddie.
You got that right, Steve.
Yeah, I have. It's got its certain charms, Ed. If you read my book, The Fixer, you'll see about its charms.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't actually been here. The last time I was here was Mike Tyson against Carl the Truth Williams.
That's a long time.
There wasn't much truth that night. It lasted about 45 seconds. I think I was about 12. I come over with my mum and dad. I didn't remember it being this bad, but, it's got its charms, as you say.
But, so the crowds there can be lively, as opposed to Vegas, where they might pay more money, but they're soulless. That's the only thing I will say in its defence.
Yeah, and listen, it's renowned for hosting big boxing shows. I've been quite shocked, actually. I only arrived yesterday, about how popular Carl is out here. I think we all forget that, obviously, he's been on Showtime for a number of fights now. And just walking through New York City yesterday, doing some promo stuff at Times Square, he was stopped a number of times in the streets, by sports fans and boxing fans, which sort of makes you realise just what that tournament has done for him over here. And obviously now, back on Sky Sports, hopefully he's going to get the same acclaim in the UK. Well,
that's the whole point of being on that Showtime event with their 360, their programme where they sort of go behind the scenes. Right. The whole point is, and also 2 of his 3 fights in there have been cracking fights. So I'm pleased he's got that bit of profile. I mean, it's in many ways it's down to you to make sure he gets the profile this end in the future. To be brutally honest, sadly.
Yeah, of course. I think Carl deserves it more than anyone else. I think the great thing about Carl is you always know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And with the Super 6 series, there's no easy fight. So, I mean, people will look at Ben Johnson and say, well, that's probably the easiest fight Carl has had maybe in his last 4 or 5 fights. But when you look at the guy and you look how well prepared he is and realise what he's got to fight for on Saturday night, it's definitely not going to be an easy fight because, this is for the final of Super 6. Obviously, Glenn Johnson came in late and he's got a chance to just gate crash the party and have a mega fight with Andre Ward. But I think if justice can be done in sport and if justice can be done in boxing, then Carl will be the one that makes the final. But of course, justice means nothing. And he's got to go and do the business against a tough Glenn Johnson, who looked in great shape yesterday at the press conference. Yeah. And looks very confident. Well,
we know that really, he can do that 168 to super middleweight quite comfortably. He only was up at light heavy because he ran out of options. He had enough doors smashed in his face when he was a super middle. We tend to forget that. He was fighting for the super middleweight title and being stitched up, certainly in that fight with Sven Otke back in 1999. So, I think he is a natural super middle. And even at 42. Now, Eddie, what's the sort of feel there? What's the feel like now you're in Atlantic City? What's the feeling about the house on the gate on the night? Are we going to have at least a lively atmosphere, a lively crowd?
Yeah, it will be. I mean, I think, obviously Glenn Johnson's not a huge draw over here, and Carl Froch is a Brit, so you're never going to get sort of 10, 15,000 in there, but there's going to be a good few thousand in there, and I've seen the gate receipts already. They've done well on that. It's a bit of a strange atmosphere for Carl, this one, because it's quite rare in boxing to actually know what the next step is and know when that next step will be. So you know what you're fighting for here, and Carl is really fighting. I mean, I stayed at the press conference yesterday, and I've seen it on a lot of the forums already. People are discussing it. I said that if he beats Glenn Johnson and he beats Andre Ward, I think he goes down to one of the greatest British fighters of all time. And I don't think you can really argue with that.
Because of the sequence.
People argue that Calzaghe or Lennox Lewis, but if you look at consecutive fights at the top level against consecutive great fighters, I think that's the level that Carl's operating at now, and I'm just so pleased that the people in the UK will get a chance to get behind him and support him because he's a great guy. He lives and breathes boxing, and he said it's quite funny yesterday. He said, what's the tactic going into the Glenn Johnson fight? He said, I work off my jab, and when he comes close, I try and whip in some fast punches, then move out. But if he wants to come face to face with me, I'm not the kind of person to turn that down. And he's got that in him, and he can't turn away from that. And I had a chat with Rob McCracken last night, and he said he's a nightmare because all he really wants to do is have a tear up. Well, it's just the way he fights, but he can't really stand. I mean, Glenn Johnson's a big hitter. He doesn't want to be drawn into his fight. This is all about getting the job done. you know, and making that final. And once we make that final against Andre Ward, then we're talking about a huge fight.
Yeah, and because in all fairness, Rob's absolutely right, because for several rounds in Helsinki, back before Christmas, Ed, before that you were involved, Rob was having to pull him back. Before they sat down, Carl would come back to the corner, he'd look at Rob with puppy eyes and say, can I do it? I.e., can I go and knock him out? And Rob would be grabbing him. Sometimes these exchanges, these stand-up exchanges, would last 20 seconds before he sat him down. So that's always been a bit of a problem with Carl. It's actually controlling his mind. Okay, listen, Ed, I'm gonna cut this a bit short, but just to say quickly, obviously you're looking forward again to the next prize fighter next Tuesday. That's it. That's moving up in the world, isn't it? Atlantic City at York Hall, Eddie. That's quality.
I'll tell you, I know where I'd rather be, to be honest with you, because
and I know where you'd rather be.
We've honestly only, I know promoters will say we've only got these sort of tickets left. We've got a handful of tickets left. We will announce probably tomorrow that the event is sold out. And for the first time, actually, it's nice to not have any withdrawals. Touch wood. It looks like all eight participants are all fine.
Brilliant.
You know, we've got the 4 seeded fighters, Witter, El Machi, McIntyre and Lyons, against the 3 undefeated fighters, and also, you know, the experienced Pete Madonna. So it's going to be a great tear-up, great mix-up. Every fighter has sold, you know, over 100 tickets for the event. John Wayne Hibbert sold 350 tickets. So the atmosphere is going to be electric. And I'm so excited about that event. And obviously, you know, like you say, Atlantic City for York Hall. But let's be honest, Bunty, is there a better place to be than a packed-out York Hall? I don't think so.
Well, listen, there's no better place. Eddie, give Carl my best, and I'll see you Tuesday evening at York Hall. Eddie, thanks.